Good morning, committee, and welcome to any member of the public joining the 6th of January 2022 meeting of the Western and Southern Area Planning Committee, which is one of the 3 area-based planning committees of the Dorset Council. Our area of remit covers the previous Weymouth and Portland Borough Council and most of the previous West Dorset District Council areas. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Council has had to put in place measures to enable the Council's decision-making process to continue whilst keeping safe members of the public, councillors and Council staff in accordance with the government's guidance on social distancing. As the regulations allowing the decision to be made at committee meetings from remote locations have now expired, the Council has decided that the meeting will continue to meet remotely and make a minded to resolution with an officer delegated to make the formal decision. The officer will make their decision immediately after the committee has voted on each item and will give reasons if their decision differs from the minded to resolution. Therefore, this meeting is being live streamed to the public and a copy of the recording will be available on the Council website following the meeting. Members of the public are invited to make written representations provided they are submitted to Democratic Services by 8:30 a.m. no later than 2 working days before the meeting. These representations will take the form of written statements of no more than 450 words with no attachments and will be read out at the committee by our administration assistant. For the benefit of the public, my name is Councillor David Shortell and I'm Chairman of this Area Planning Committee. My Vice Chairman is Councillor Bill Pipe. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, members and any members of the public.
I would like to introduce other members of the committee. Councillor Dave Bolwell. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everyone.
Councillor Kelvin Clayton. Good morning, Kelvin. Good morning, Kelvin.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, all, and a Happy New Year to you all.
A Happy New Year to you. Councillor Susan Cocking. Good morning, Susan.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Councillor Jean Dunseth. Good morning, Jean.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Councillor Nick Ireland. Good morning, Nick.
Morning, Chairman.
Good morning. Councillor Louis O'Leary. Councillor Kate Weller. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning.
Councillor Sarah Williams. Councillor John Worth. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, everybody.
Councillor Weller, Chairman, you haven't asked.
I thought I did. Good morning, Kate. Did I not ask?
You did ask me. You were having a funny 5 seconds, Councillor Pipe. I did say good morning. Thank you.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
That's quite all right.
I thought I had. Thank you for your assistance. For information, officers involved in the meeting include Anna Lee, and she's the service manager. Anne Collins, she's the area manager for Western and Southern team. Bob Burden, Emma Telford, Charlotte Haynes, and Hugh Williams, they're planning officers. Bill Crowther, who's our solicitor. Jenny Williams, our technical officer, and she will be reading the representation submitted by members of the public. And Denise Hunt, who's our Democratic Services officer. May I advise the committee?
Chairman, I wonder if I could just interrupt a moment. Did you call Councillor Kimber?
Yes.
Chair, I'll just put a little note on there to say I wasn't called, just for information.
Oh. You were quite right, Councillor Kimber. Yeah, I looked at my notes and I thought, yes, I think I've missed you. And I have. I do apologise for, so.
No worries.
May I advise the committee and members of the public that item 4D on the agenda, and that's POUT 2021-01128, which is Land East of the Paddocks Mosterton DT8 3HQ to consider an outline application for the erection of up to 9 dwellings and access has been deferred for technical reasons and will not be determined at this meeting. We're now going to the agenda proper, and the first item on the agenda is apologies. I'd like to confirm any apologies for absence. Do we have any, please?
Chairman, I've received apologies from Councillor Sarah Williams and Councillor Louis O'Leary.
Thank you. We've got 2 apologies. Duly noted. Item 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Does any member have any declaration of pecuniary or other conflict of interest, bias or predetermination regarding any item on the agenda? Thank you, committee. I would like to inform the committee and members of the public that because this is an informal meeting of the committee, which can only make minded to resolutions, we are unable to approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on the 2nd of December 2021. This will be done at our next formal meeting. Item 3 on the agenda is public participation. The committee receives a number of written representations submitted in accordance with the amended speaking protocol effective from the 20th of July 2020. That is the first 3 public statements received an objection and the first 3 in support, including the applicant or agent, and those will be read out by the officer not involved in the application. This number does not include representations received from town and parish councils or the relevant Dorset councillors. The written statements have been circulated to all members of the committee prior to this meeting. Item 4 on the agenda, planning applications. We have 6 planning applications before us today for consideration. We will break for lunch when plus comfort breaks for 5 or 10 minutes, which will be taken when is required. Now we go on to item 4A, although in some agendas it might show as 5A, but it should be 4A, and that is item 1 of the item P VOC 2021. That's 03367, and that's Unit 2, Lyme Regis Industrial Estate, Upline Road, Lyme Regis, DT7 3LS, and that's the change of use from B1 to ED, formerly used class D2, to allow the building to be used as a fitness centre without compliance to condition 4 of the planning approval WDD 14002435, restrictions on business hours. I now invite Bob Burton, the case officer, to introduce this item. Over to you, Bob.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Right, so just to locate members, I'll just select the pointer option. Lyme Regis, the town centre is down in this direction. This is the A3070 up Lyme Road, running northwest out of the town towards linking up with the A35 and the route off to Axminster, so that direction out of the town. The site is a central part of a council-owned site. Central part of this elongated building here, and there is car parking at the rear. In terms of the industrial estate, there are other industrial units in this area here, and that's the Lyme Medical Centre there. Residential dwellings lie further away in this direction, and also on the opposite side of Up Lyme Road, the nearest being Highview, the bungalow there. There's also a dwelling that's gone in relatively recently in this location just up here, a little bit further away. And so the site plan just shows the site in a little bit more detail with some car parking spaces associated with that unit indicated on the plan also. Just to give you a feel of it in aerial photographic terms, we're dealing with this element here, central area of the building, and car parking. Extensive areas of car parking exist within the site at the rear and also informally on the access road around here. Dwellings are over in this direction here, you can see beyond the estate, and also high view, the one I mentioned, nearest one is there, 47 metres away from the application building. And the other one I mentioned that has gone in recently is in this site here, further up Lime Road. So just to give you a bit more of a flavour photographically, this is the up Lime Road, looking back towards the site from the direction, as it were. So the unit is within the central part of this building here, access into the site there, and then building is here. You can see it actually signed there. Nearest dwelling, high view there, with other dwellings further away to the rear there. And just looking the other way on the A road, unit is in here, and parking at the rear, as you can see, extensive area of car parking available there. So this is round at the back, that's the actual entrance to the unit there, and just an indication of other informal parking in addition to the more formal parking available at the rear of the site. As you'll see from my report, it's on a key employment site. This does provide some element of employment, obviously, with the existing people who manage the site. Provides a useful community facility, being in existence on the site since 2015. Parking provision is clearly a good amount of parking available in the vicinity of the site. But the main issue identified here, and it's of concern to the Town Council and was with environmental health, based on permanent relaxation of the days and hours of use, relates to just the prospect of whether or not that in giving such an unfettered permission, that could result in potential problems of noise and disturbance, particularly in the night, to residents in the area. So this is a sort of classic situation where you know, a use which exists, which hasn't caused problems, albeit through daytime operation, has potential to have an unrestricted use applied to it. It's not without precedent for other gym type fitness uses. So it's one where, having discussed it with environmental health, they're receptive to the idea of a temporary 12-month permission, which we could potentially give to them, which would allow an opportunity to gauge the effect of unrestricted operation. If it proved to be a use which didn't cause problems, any substantiated complaints, then you know, we might consider a more permanent permission in the future. And similarly, if there were problems, then we would still have control to review it in 12 months' time, and the opportunity to reimpose more restrictive days and or hours of use, as it were. So just a little point I would mention on my condition 2, the specified use as a fitness centre, the words "as a" should be inserted in your condition on your report before fitness centre. They just got missed off, a slight typo. But basically, the recommendation, as you see, is for the committee to be minded to grant subject to conditions, and based on those conditions, plans list specified fitness centre use, unrestricted days and hours for 12 months, no amplified musical speech unless it's been agreed in writing with the local planning authority, parking as indicated, Chairman. So thank you, that's the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Rob. Committee, are there any questions of a technical nature for the case officer?
Yes, Chairman. First off, we've got Councillor Paul Kimber, followed by Councillor Susan Cooking.
Okay, Paul, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a minor point. As I was going through the report, I was just looking at the human rights factor, which we sort of overlook it from time to time, and I was wondering whether it something should have read around the applicant will not discriminate on the grounds of abilities and colour from that side. That was just a point from myself. Thank you.
I noted, thank you, Chairman.
Can I pass that back to Bob to respond, please?
Yeah, obviously we have regard to respect for human rights in dealing with planning applications. I'm not aware of any issues on that issue at this point in time. Yeah, I don't know.
It's just something, Chair, to look at. I just thought so. We might have got the. We take it as read the human rights factor, and sometimes, and I just when I read it, first of all, wonder if we was coming from the right direction on this. That was all.
Yeah. Yeah. If I could just respond, Chair.
I'm not saying we got it wrong. It's a standard item on
yeah.
But
in terms of obviously, in terms of the human rights of potential users, you'll see round at the entrance of the site there's a level threshold into the building. So if people who are less able wish to go and exercise there, they could have the opportunity to do that. As regards to the human rights of obviously residents in the area, clearly we're having regard to that with a temporary use recommendation here, and you know, we need to be mindful of that. It should also be borne in mind, of course, that you know, in addition to normal amenity considerations of noise and disturbance, from an environmental health point of view, there is always the fallback statutory nuisance legislation if disturbance reached that level, which environmental health would become involved with if that were the case. So there are a number of constraints and controls we have, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Bob. Does that answer your question, Councillor Kimber?
Yes, Chair. It was more of a point, really, that really asking.
Okay. We'll now take Councillor Susan Cocking, who also has a technical question.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted just two quick questions. One was, is the building soundproof? Because the residents are concerned about the noise. I just wondered if that part of the building had some sort of soundproofing. And also, you sort of quickly glanced over it, and it is in the report that from 10 p.m, if users of the gym wanted music, then they would have to provide their own headphones. So is that going to be a planning condition as well? Or do we put that on the conditions of use that after 10?
Yeah, I've got a condition for no amplified music or speech unless agreed, and you'll see in your report that actually makes reference to second part of the condition, which will only be given if the installation properties of the building and any proposed sound installation provisions are considered to be adequate. So we've recognised, that they need to have appropriate sound insulation in there if they are to have any amplified music or speech, Chairman.
So is that something that we would go and check on if they were to have amplified music?
Yeah, we would want to be satisfied that the sound insulation properties were adequate, and we would liaise with Environmental Health Department as necessary on that issue.
Okay then, thank you, Bob. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Cocking, thank you very much. Is there any further technical questions?
None at all, Chairman. You're free to go to debate.
Before I open the debate, members may I remind you to direct any questions or remarks through the chair, and I will invite members to speak in turn. Requests to speak needs to be made via the virtual chat facility. Can I also remind members that the chat facility is for the smooth running of the meeting and must not be used for discussion on the merits of an application. Please keep microphones on mute when not speaking to preserve audio quality. I now open the item for full debate.
Councillor Nick Ireland, Chairman, first off.
Okay, go ahead, Nick.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to propose we accept the recommendations. This seems reasonable. Temporary seems to be reasonable. So if there are any problems that arise, we can deal with them. And extending the hours makes sense. 7 o'clock in the morning is actually quite late for something like this to start, because a lot of people like to go to the gym before they go to work. So it makes perfect sense.
Right. I note your proposal. Thank you very much for this. Is there any other comments, or is there a seconder?
We have no further questions, Chairman, but first off the mark as a seconder was Councillor Paul Kimber. If you'd like to verify that in audio, that would be great.
Yeah, can you confirm that you're seconding that, please, Paul?
Absolutely, Chair. Happy to second it, and I know I was visited my own industrial estate in Weymouth the other day, and I noted we had a gymnasium on there, so it's not unusual to have gymnasiums on industrial estates. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Right, if there is no more deliberation and members are content they've heard the entire presentation and debate, I will now take a vote by roll call. So I'm going to start off with Councillor Dave Bolwell.
Minded to approve, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Kelvin Clayton.
Yeah, approved, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Susan Cocking.
Approved, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jean Dunseth.
Approved, Chair.
Councillor Bill Pike.
For, Chairman.
Thank you. For clarity, Councillor Nick Ireland.
For, Chairman.
Thank you. For clarity, Councillor Paul Kimber.
Approved, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Kate Weller.
For.
Thank you. And Councillor John Worth.
Minded to approve, Chairman.
Thank you. I believe that is unanimous, so I now ask Anne-Lee to make a formal decision on this item.
Do you have a decision, Chairman?
That's a unanimous decision.
Yeah, but are you going to vote?
Oh, that's a good point. I'm voting in favour. Thank you
No,
very
it's
much.
unanimous. Anna.
Thank you, Chairman. I confirm that I have taken the officer's recommendation, the presentation and the committee's questions and minded to decision into account, and my decision is the application will be granted for a temporary period subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you. Okay, we'll now take item 4B on the agenda, and that's PRM 2021-00630 land off Cadderstock Road, Maiden Newton, Dorchester. And that's reserved matters application dealing with the site appearance, landscaping, scale and layout in relation to an outline approval WDD 16001598. And I now invite Bob Burton, the case officer, to introduce this item. Over to you again, Bob.
Thank you, Chairman. Right, just a couple of items of housekeeping first. On your update sheet, just to inform you that you'll notice in the recommendation it was subject to satisfactory landscaping plan being received, slight amendment to landscaping plan. That's now been received, and that landscaping plan is now shown on your update sheet as the number and condition 7 amended accordingly. Also, the period of tree replacement is amended from 5 to 10 years, which neatly ties in with the outline permission. So the recommendation will be effectively amended to, if a committee is minded to approve, that's subject to the conditions. So the landscaping plan is now received. I'll just mention at paragraph 15.24, where I discuss a few points about surface water drainage. I said that the scheme would be installed before commencement of the development. That should actually be the scheme installed before completion of the development, just to correct that that point. Okay. And I just mentioned that I believe we are being joined by James Weir, the Senior Conservation Officer, so if members have any particular questions specifically for him, he should be available in due course.
Right, okay.
Okay, so in terms of location, the village centre of Maiden Newton is just off to the south here.
Bob, we don't have your presentation currently on screen.
Oh, right.
Thank you, Bill.
My pleasure.
That's right.
There we go.
Is that coming up?
Yeah.
That's coming up. You're not on slideshow though.
No.
Okay now?
That's it. Yep.
Right, apologies for that. Okay, so the village centre is just immediately to the south here. Get me right interruption back. So this is Church Road, which would provide vehicular and pedestrian access to the site, although pedestrian access is also available in this little snicket lane here. So Church Road runs up here, turns into Manor Farm Close with the 1990s development, a mix of conversion and new build, which then will lead directly into the site through an extension of the road through into the site here, and with an access into the field there. In terms of other significant features in the area, the Grade 1 listed St Mary's Church is here. Church barn adjacent to the application site is here. A couple of bungalows close to the site there. And this is the Cattestock Road frontage there, where there's significant landscaping in terms of trees and vegetation along that area of the site. So you'll note from this plan that the application site includes the choir, a lot of open land to the west, and over a period of several applications, the development has been progressively honed down and contained into this eastern part of the site to safeguard much of the openness of the choir, and also to safeguard the setting of the Grade 1 listed church as you come across the footpath, Froome Valley Trail, across the site here. Right, and I'm showing you this plan, which is this is an important plan. This is a parameter plan, which was a very specific element of the outline permission, which clearly sets out the precise location and nature of the built development within the application, the built development area of the site here. So we've got access in from Manor Farm Close, 2 detached dwellings in these locations. Terrace here, a terrace fronting the road here, and a terrace fronting the open space here, with pedestrian access there and shared surfacing here. So it's important with this reserve matters, and remember this is a reserve matters application. So the principle is established by the outline permission for 9 dwellings up to 2-storey in height, and the reserve matters application looks at the details of the layout, scale, landscaping and appearance. So that's what you're focusing on today. So then moving on to the layout plan. As I said, the road is a logical extension of Manor Farm Close in the northerly direction here, sweeping round. And it also has a turning head facility incorporated here with access into the adjacent field. Initially there is a terrace of 3 dwellings fronting onto the road here, traditional pattern of development, then a terrace of 4 which actually are approached their front elevations more treated on this side with appropriate front porches, and these like sort of small little rear courtyard areas here with a perfect stone 1.5 metre boundary wall along there, similar 1.2 metre wall in this area here. But these can be approached from the fronts along the path shown here. Then there are 2 dwellings reflecting the locations on the parameter plan, 2 detached dwellings here. Garaging is generally placed, as you see, opposite of the dwellings on this side here, a mix of car spaces, garaging and car ports. And in some ways I see that as an advantage because with the road coming in here, we need to find a suitable, this space provides a suitable area for the garaging rather than having lots of garaging at the back of the plots here. So it helps to keep an overriding sense of greater openness to this part of the site, the developed part of the site, which helps to just extend in effect the openness and feel of the choir, the open land beyond. And also with the garaging in these sort of locations, it has much lesser impact than dwellings because obviously we've got 2 bungalows here which clearly have windows looking out this way. And there's also a garage block up in this location here. I'll mention an issue which I looked at very carefully on this application, and which is the relationship of the boundary fence of plot 1 here to side windows of the living room to church barn here. So there are windows, like 2 small windows located here and here, and from discussion with the applicant, and I have also met the occupiers of the barn on site to understand the position better. But with discussion with the applicant, he has amended the scheme so that the fence returns, instead of going along just less than about a metre from those windows, it now is 3.5 metres away before returning along there. So to ease the relationship, so that there isn't an oppressive impact or overbearing impact of the fence on those 2 windows in church barn. Okay. Something I would also mention at this point is that looking at this plan, I mean, looking at the highways, it looks there's some representations have referred to a suburban treatment of the road. I think it's partly a function of the drawing approach here, that just the way it's shown, but this channel here, the drainage channel, is simply a continuation of what exists on Manor Farm Close. It's that sort of treatment on there. So that's a more subtle treatment than it would appear on this drawing, shall we say. But clearly there needs to be, if this is to be adopted, then there are certain minimum areas required for vehicle turning and for carriageway and footway widths. And I have sought to reduce the amount of tarmac hard surfacing as much as I can, but having discussed it with the Highways Authority, this is the minimum I can achieve in order to satisfy adoption requirements. I have also, we did have more extensive hard standing areas for vehicles in this area here alongside the garages, and I've reduced that by just having sort of wheel track slabs or pavers, as it were, with grass between. So a more sort of rustic, rural sort of approach to the parking associated with the garages and cart sheds has been achieved, which just helps a little just to take the edge off. And of course, this area, which would have had the coloured gas tanks, which have now been replaced by air source heat pumps, that would be planted with wildflowers. So it gives just a more sort of slightly rustic, rural feel to that area. And just to give you a feel for the site in aerial terms, so we come up Church Road and Church Farm Close into the site here, and the built development is basically in this sort of area here, east of that line. Okay, just to give you an idea of that. So the 2 bungalows there adjacent to the site, Church Barn is here, St Mary's Church is there. It's got sidewall dwellings down here, which I'll make reference to a little bit later on. Manor Farmhouse, large dwelling there, and Maiden Newton House over here. You can also see the existing planting, which is to be retained and managed along this area of the application site onto Caddistock Road here. So just give you a feel of the site. As you enter the site, that's Bell Cottage, just as you're leaving Manor Farm Close. That's Church Barn, part of it's set back behind there. So as you enter the site, there's a terrace of 3 dwellings, a little bit higher than that because the land is rising. So that's the first terrace encountered, which is a vernacular cottage style design, as is the second, very much picking up on a traditional materials palette. With chimneys and flint blockwork and brick banding, which is a very vernacular sort of approach. A little bit of render included as well, which you also see in Manor Farm Close, for example. That's one of the detached dwellings at the end of the site. And then this view here is effectively looking towards the bungalows, the 2 bungalows that front onto Caddistock Road. You can see those outlined in the background. Just gives you an idea of the cart sheds and garages which would be on that side of the road nearest to them, and that's plot 9, design of plot 9. And then this shot is effectively from the open side of the core, looking towards the development. So those 3 cottages front onto the road. These 4 have more of a frontage facing onto the core itself, with porches, appropriate detailing, rather than having French windows and that sort of treatment that you'd normally find on the rear of dwellings. And that's obviously the detached unit at the end there. And that's just a view from the northern end, looking back towards the site, looking southward. So the 2 detached dwellings at the end of the site there. And so a general view as you enter from Church Farm Close into the site. Just giving a little bit more detail on that. So natural slate roofs, flint block and brickwork, walling for the first terrace. Just give you a flavour for that. And on the second terrace, again, similar flint blockwork treatment there, some stepping. This is the view from the access road, so stepping slightly up the gradient you see there. All dwellings have chimneys, and it's simple vernacular cottage style design to those. And house 8, this has had some revision work done to it, as has house 9. We've added water tabling, gable ends here. The windows are sliding sash timber, recessed back in, lead porches, some detailing to the flint block and coarse stonework there. So quite a nice sort of, the houses 8 and 9 are meant to stand out as just being slightly grander, slightly more larger proportion dwellings. They couldn't be made significantly longer because that wouldn't have been in accordance with the parameters plan, which gives a clear indication of the approximate length of those. So English Heritage comment about maybe extending those, making them longer, making them L-shaped, wouldn't have been in accordance with the parameters plan. And number 9, you see we've got string coursing added in, coins to windows and changes of direction, more substantial internal chimney, lead work porch again, flint block and coarse brickwork. Just also shown that in relation to number 11 Cadstock Road, the bungalow there, just to give an idea of the relationship with that, just to clarify that. Right, now here I'm showing the relationship. This is plot 1 as you enter the site. This is the existing dwelling church barn adjacent to the site. And you can see here there's a 45-degree line put in there from the bottom of the window there, just showing that the fence line, which in front of the window is recessed back, as I showed on the layout plan when we started. So you've got 3.5 meters between this face of church barn and the facing part of the fence. So this is the fence comes down the boundary a metre away, and then it turns sharply back in for 3.5 meters, or 3.5 meters between that face and the face of the fence, and then continues on its line to the end of the boundary of the garden, if that makes sense. And again, you can see that if you sort of a section along this line here, that's the drawing here. So the fence runs a metre away, and then at this point, instead of going in front of those windows, it turns at right angles away from those and then returns back along 3.5 meters later on that alignment there. So the second window still continues to look straight out across the core, and the first window would not have a significant adverse effect on its amenity through overlooking or loss of privacy, because it would not be oppressive at a 3.5 meters distance away, in my view. Right, this is just the landscaping scheme that's now been submitted. And just give you a couple of points about this. The area here would be retained as planting as is required by the parameters plan, but it would also be appropriately managed and reinforced with additional planting. A number of individual standard trees would be planted around the site, as you can see here, and Those species would include lime, birch, field maple, and the new boundary hedge around the edge of the site, which would also be fronted by parkland railings. That would be planted with a native hedgerow, so good ecological benefit from that as well. So that would include species such as field maple, hazel, holly, hawthorn, a normal sort of mix of species for that. Right, just to give you a bit of a flavour of the area photographically, as you enter Church Road, Manor Farmhouse, you see is here, obviously a more imposing dwelling, and elements of this have helped to inform the design of the detached plots 8 and 9. We have the principle of sliding sash timber windows is employed in the new build development on the site. Use of coins around windows and the changes of direction is included. String courses is also included in the two detached dwelling designs. Lovely characteristic flint walls along Church Road, and the site, our site, continues with natural stone walling in the form of Purbeck stone walling to the frontage areas. And looking along Church Road, going towards our site, we also see on existing dwellings flint and brick banding, another area that's been picked up on our scheme, as it were, as the scheme we're looking at today. And generally the use of coursing is also something which is included within the scheme that's before you today. So then moving round into Church Farm Close, you see this distinctive channel detail, drainage channel here, and that is continued through in a similar manner to what is shown here. I just mentioned while we're at this, I mean, there has been some mention about concern about construction traffic, which will have to use this route here. There's a distance between that wall and this wall of, I believe it's 5.7 metres actually, that distance across there. But there are conditions on the outline permission to address construction environment management plan and a construction traffic management plan. So that will be detailed, addressed under those conditions. We also have here evidence of use of coins again, brickwork, render. Render has been used on the scheme on our site as well, so we've got a continuity of materials in use. And as you turn the corner to looking into our site here, see these channels would continue with a road, logical continuation into our site. Again, you see brickwork used here, and the internal chimneys, characteristic of Manor Farm Close development, would also be employed on the scheme that we have before us today. These type of street lamps would also be used on the development as well. So a continuity of those two. Standing in the core looking east, this is Church Barn here. You see it has windows at both ends of the building at high level, which help to give light to this room in addition to these side windows. And there are also ground floor windows on the other side of the building, which give light into that part of the building. But just to give you an idea there of the character of the site, there's the two bungalows which are accessed from Catstock Road, and our site would be developed in this part north above this line basically, which then runs round halfway up that hedgerow in distance there. So looking back southward from the top end of the Quar, so our development would be over on this part of the site, leaving all this land here open as informal open space. St Mary's Church there, Church Barn here, and that's Bell Cottage, the last dwelling before you enter the site itself there. And that's just another shot of the site. You can see better the idea of the amount of vegetation that forms a sort of hedge bank along Catstock Road frontage there. And then here, I've just given you an idea of the relationship of the low set windows in Church Barn relative to the site. And remember, we'd be going back 3.5 meters away with the fence before returning parallel with the windows here. A little bit more of an idea of the relationship of Church Barn to the site itself generally. And again, looking back, another window at the other end of Church Barn, giving light into that part of the building there as well. That's the garage to Bell Cottage, which is just up here. Bell Cottage, which is actually set back from this wall. It's there's a vehicular access that runs down to its garage there between this gable wall and the existing boundary stone wall there. Right, that's just a view from the top of the site, looking back generally at the development. That's one of the chalet bungalows on Caddistock Road, Bell Cottage there, Church Barn there, and the St Mary's Church in the background there. And this is that planting I referred to on Caddistock Road frontage, just to give you an idea of the extent and nature of that, which would be retained and managed. So the principle of development clearly is established by the outline permission. So you're looking today, your focus is on those 4 reserve matters: scale, layout, appearance and landscaping. The layout is a very traditional grain, following the parameters plan, which it must do to accord with the outline permission. Scale is 2-storey, which is a requirement of the parameters plan, and it reflects, therefore, the nature of the Church Farm Close development, which it would be accessed through. Appearance, generally a vernacular style, plus slightly grander, traditional materials, so very much in keeping. Landscaping, Caddistock Road and planting retained, new hedging and tree planting to be provided. On residential amenity, we've looked carefully at the relationship with adjacent development, in particular the relationship between plot 1 and its boundary boundary fence and Church Barn, before coming to a view on that. So those are the main issues there. So the recommendation is that the committee be minded to approve, subject to minded to approve the reserve matters as submitted, subject to the conditions that are set out, having, as I said, and as is shown on the update sheet, received the landscaping plan. So the list of conditions is fairly sort of standard in terms of materials details for the conservation area, including timber windows, which would be recessed, so getting the quality there in terms of the fenestration, which is always an important point. Some detail on black rainwater goods, conservation roof lights, landscape management and maintenance schedule to ensure that's appropriately carried out. Plot 1 dwelling cannot be occupied until the boundary fence has been erected. That would help protect the privacy and amenity of Church Barn occupiers, and no further means of enclosure in the protected area, i.e. that's that 3.5 metre wide area between the recessed section of fence and the side elevation of Church Barn. And furthermore, we're removing permitted development rights on extensions, outbuildings or decking in the rear garden of plot 1 to further safeguard the amenity of Church Barn. Electric vehicle charging scheme will be provided. Each dwelling would have its own charging point. Highways layout as indicated, and roller shutter doors on a couple of plots because they're very close to the road, so roller shutter doors required for those, Chair. So that concludes my recommendation that you be minded to approve these reserve matters, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Just for clarity there, Bob, if I could just interrupt, the rollers are for garages, aren't they? Not for the houses.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. On this plan here, Chair, garages 5 and 6 here, just those 2 would require that particular treatment
because of the proximity to the road, I assume.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Got you.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed, Bob. That's very comprehensive. I now invite Jenny Williams to read the written statement submitted to Democratic Services. So over to you, Jenny.
Thank you, Chair. Malcolm Lofts. Object. I wish to object harm to residential amenity and privacy of my home, Church Barn. The parameters plan is definitive as to the area on which 9 houses can be built. It is not definitive as to the 9 houses' precise location. No house should ever be built in contravention to planning policy, such as harm to the residential amenity or privacy of existing nearby buildings. Accordingly, my rights of residential amenity and privacy must override the parameters plan location of plot 1. The 2020 Appeals Inspector's third main issue with the application was the harm to Church Barn. Also, the Planning Department emphasised this harm, quoting ENV 16 and NPPF 127, following minimal and inadequate changes to the fence since the harm persists. Plots 1 to 3 are raised above the natural field level, thus dominating unnecessarily nearby properties at Manor Farm Close. Despite the slope in the field, the roof lines of plots 1 to 3 remains on the same level as that of plot 5 higher up the slope. The existing proposal continues to detrimentally harm the residential amenity and privacy of Church Barn. Further substantial changes are needed. Surface water. Runoff along my boundary wall is totally unacceptable as my floor level is below the field. Attenuation tanks. The proposed location, close to plots 1 to 3 gardens and Church Barn, is contrary to RSK's original proposal between footpath and river. There are dangers and disadvantages of open ponds. Pond overflow back towards Church Barn is unacceptable. GAP state it is unlikely that all site surface water drainage can be served by soakaways due to the clay nature of the ground and high groundwater levels, a similar view to RSK. Conditions 9 and 10 are so crucial that the detailed report should be carried out now before any decision on the reserved matters. Design statement. The applicant confirms the tradition of boundary walls will be continued in the new development, yet proposes an incongruous traditional parkland railing on the western side where walls are aesthetically more appropriate, marrying in with the character and appearance of the existing Manor Farm Close when approaching from Frome Valley Trail footpath. The garages for plot 3 should be next to plot 2 and 4. Conclusions. No changes have been made after the many substantive objections since the 8th of October 21, including Historic England, District Councillor, Parish Council and many local residents. The seriousness of flooding risks is so important that the detailed surface water drainage report must be prepared before other reserve matters are approved. The plan continues to breach planning policy with regard to the residential amenity and privacy of Church Barn. Accordingly, I urge you to reject this application. Richard Hallett, object. I wish to object on the grounds that the application does not ensure a well-planned development in the interests of visual amenity, schedule of conditions point 5, and fails to provide a detailed surface water management scheme, schedule of conditions point 9 and 10. Visual amenity. The development will be the first indication of modernity when travelling along the Frome Valley Trail and Wessex Way and Great Chalk Way from the river's source at Evershot. On entering the village, this suburban development will greet the visitor and its visual impact will be detrimental and out of keeping with our village surroundings. The development would be far more suitable as bungalows, lessening the visual impact, height, blending sympathetically into our environment with trees, hedging and stone walling. 1. Attractiveness. The west elevation to properties 1 to 7 and the entire development are unknown, without which an informed decision is not possible. This is the view when approaching Maiden Newton along the Frome Valley Trail Church towards a church and is an essential detail. 2. Height. Houses shall overwhelm the entire area by their height. The application does not show the height of the development alongside the height of the Grade 1 listed church tower. 3. Boundaries. The building and walling stones of the village are flint, chalk, Purbeck limestone, Ham Hill stone with brick. The 15th and 19th century parts of the church are built from flint and Purbeck limestone. Buildings and boundaries should be stone walled, not timber / metal. 4. Garages. The garages are proposed to be oak framed and clad and fencing timber boards. There are no wooden framed and clad structures in the village, nor should there be. Traditional building stones, point 3, are common in this conservation area. Surface water management. Furthermore, I wish to object on the grounds that the application fails to meet schedule conditions point 9 and 10 detailed surface water management scheme. It is unacceptable these details are unavailable to those affected by this development. Variations in discharge of ephemeral floods are controlled by combinations of rock soil type, gradient morphology and land use. However, in the absence of the detailed surface water management scheme, the effect of the gradient profile and change of land use to flooding the area to the south, Church Barn, Church Lane and War Memorial, these areas often flood, is unknown. Please consider rejecting this application since it fails to ensure a well-planned development in the interests of visual amenity and attractiveness, schedule of conditions point 5 in this conservation area, and also fails to comply with the schedule of conditions point 9 and 10 in this sensitive flood risk area. Steve Beavis, object. I'm generally supportive of new housing development in the village, provided it is to a high standard. I wrote in favour of the neighbouring Manor Farm Close development when it was first proposed some years ago. I was also initially prepared to be positive about this current development, but with the strong proviso that it should be to an excellent standard, complementing its location in the heart of the old village, in the conservation area, and the neighbouring 3 significant listed buildings, the church, Maiden Newton House and Manor Farm. The site is also crossed by a public footpath, part of the Macmillan Way, leading to the River Frome water meadows, which are within an area of outstanding natural beauty and also an SSI. The footpath is well used by villagers and ramblers alike, and for those arriving from the north affords a marvellous view of the church and an impressive first sight of the village. What a pity if the first glimpse in the future should be the somewhat mundane housing estate currently under construction. I wasn't alone in the expectation that the site deserved a more sympathetic treatment. The Conservation Officer, English Heritage and many villagers shared the same ambition. In this we were encouraged by the fact that the neighbouring Manor Farm Close development was able to fulfil the same high design standard with vernacular detailing while still delivering a commercially attractive scheme. The developers of the present scheme have already made several attempts at delivering an acceptable proposal, but on each occasion council officers and the public opinion have rejected the revised schemes, which consistently sets the design bar too low. The point has been made more than once that if the developers needed an exemplar of good practice, they need only look to the neighbouring site. In fact, it is hard to understand the logic in not delivering design continuity by matching its treatment of paved surfaces, hard landscaping, and the proven diversity of external finishes that has worked so well. As a retired chartered quantity surveyor, I am aware that the enhancement of this scheme is to make it more varied, interesting, and with rural rather than suburban character would have cost implications, but I am equally confident that these would be offset by the increased house prices in today's buoyant market. I hope it does not seem impolite to finish by saying that the proposed development as it stands, it would look very well in the suburbs of Bournemouth or Poole, but this beautiful corner of Maiden Newton deserves something better, something to be proud of and a legacy for future villagers. Thank you for listening. Richard Burgess, Agent. Mr. Chairman, you have a long report on this application. However, the matter is quite straightforward. Key points are: 1. The site has outline planning permission for up to 9 dwellings. And 2, the permission requires that we comply with the approved parameters plan. This specifies the extent of development, the area of open space retained, the access to the site, the alignment of the road, the position and the orientation of the houses, and that they be 2 stories. The requirement to observe strict compliance with this plan was reinforced by a previous appeal decision. We have therefore sought to comply strictly with all these matters. We have also met the parish councils and your wish for green elements such as air source heating, electric vehicle charging points and wildflower areas. The planning gain resulting from this development should also be emphasised. As well as an affordable housing contribution, the community will gain an area of 3 acres, being the larger part of the core, for use as riverside parkland. We have discussed this with the parish council. 2 points arise in the representations received. One is the understandable concern that this development should not worsen the existing highway flooding that occurs off-site near the church. We would submit that we have demonstrated by means of our preliminary drainage study that this will not happen. We have not sought to discharge the drainage condition at this stage, and there is no requirement for this in planning law. The proper sequence of events is ecological translocations, archaeological investigations, dig test pits to finally establish ground porosity, and complete drainage calculations, then formally seek to discharge drainage condition. Clearly, there is a need for a highway surface water drainage scheme in Church Road to resolve the highway flooding problem. I trust the parish council and ward councillors are pressing for this. The second point concerns the relationship of the development to Church Barn. Our position is the relationship of the development and of the first house to the barn is as shown on the approved parameters plan. 2, your case officer has visited the property and come to the judgment that light or amenity would not be unduly affected. 3, conditions are recommended to prevent this relationship being altered. We would conclude, therefore, by emphasising that we have followed your officer's advice all along redesign amendments, materials, etc. We have worked with the parish council. Your conservation officer supports the scheme. We have no objections to the conditions suggested. We ask that approval be granted for these reserved matters. Maiden Newton Parish Council. Maiden Newton Parish Council does not wish to revisit the original outline planning for this development which was approved. The Parish Council wishes to reiterate the comments previously made and those following amended plans on the 5th of November 2021. Ensuring that there is a suitable scheme for construction traffic for the development given the access is via a housing development and the issues of large vehicles and pedestrians who use this route for school and recreation. To ensure a suitable flood risk scheme has been put in place, given the flooding to properties further into the village where any rain and surface water will end up eventually has been investigated. That concludes the comments, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Jenny. Thank you. Beg your pardon. We have with us the award member for Maiden Newton, Councillor Tony Alford, and he would like to address the committee. So I hand over to Tony to address the committee.
Good morning, committee. Local plan policy in ENV 16 is a model of clarity. Proposals for development should be designed to minimise their impacts on the amenity and quiet enjoyment of both existing residents and future residents within the development and close to it. As such, development proposals will only be permitted provided they do not have a significant adverse effect on the living condition of occupiers of residential properties through loss of privacy, or they do not have a significant adverse effect on the amenity of the occupiers of properties through inadequate daylight or excessive overshadowing, overbearing impact or flicker. Despite a nominal modification to the plan, these negative environmental impacts remain overwhelming and severe. This impact is proposed by the blockage outside the windows of the neighbour, Church Barn, by a fence and blocking out the light. Not only that, but no benefit has been identified from creating these negative impacts on the neighbour. It should be noted that the substantial fence would not prevent overlooking from plot 1, the first house in the environment, due to the substantial difference in the levels. Occupants in the first house will easily see over the fence towards Church Barn, giving further evidence that the fence is in the wrong place. If there is any doubt that such negative and contrary to policy impacts would be created, the committee, I recommend, should make a site visit to examine it. Second point is that this proposal is unsuitable in character for the development in the vicinity of the listed church. In my opinion, as said by others, it is suburban in style and dominated by the estate road and hard standing. And you can see the contrast with Manor Farm Close, the pictures you saw earlier, where the sight lines are very limited, whereas you get to this new proposal and you will see the whole length of the estate road. The hard standing will lead to surface water runoff and potential environmental damage, and there's no reason to believe that this risk has been adequately assessed and ameliorated. The extent of the development site allocated to motor vehicles is contrary to policy. According to the Local Plan 2015, ENV 11, places should not be dominated by the road layout and parking. With the levels and slopes referred to above, damage from running water to a property at the lower level, such as Church Barn, could be potentially severe. Thank you very much, committee.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Tony. Okay, right. I will now go back to Bob Burton to respond with any salient points he may wish to clarify. He may even wish to refer to the Conservation Officer, Mr. James Weir, who is present at this meeting. So over to you, Bob.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, a few points I'd like to touch on. Clearly, there's a lot of discussion about the relationship of the fence to Church Barn. My judgment on this, it being 3.5 metres away, is sufficient, as I said, for me to consider that it does not have a significant adverse effect on the residential amenity of the occupiers of Church Barn. I'm also, of course, mindful of the need to provide plot 1 with a reasonable sized garden. So every bit of fence that moves away in this direction or whichever direction, is at the expense of the private amenity space of plot 1. So we need to be mindful of that as well, and I believe I've struck a reasonable balance with the support for the fence in the position that it has been shown, as I highlighted from the drawings here, which I took members through. There was also the comment made about overlooking from plot 1. Clearly, plot 1 is at right angle, so its view is out towards the back rather than straight towards these windows in Church Barn, and that sort of right angle relationship is very common in planning developments in any event. But it's true to say that plot 1 is slightly higher. Clearly, the land levels do rise, and one reason that has prompted us to add the additional condition, removing permitted development rights for example, decking or outbuildings, so that those sort of structures would not, or we'd have control over any proposals for those structures to ensure they did not have a significant adverse impact on the residential amenity of the neighbouring property in terms of overlooking or overbearing. So we have control over that as well, Chairman. And my condition on the fencing makes it quite clear that the fence has to be erected before the dwelling can be occupied, and that the area, the protected area, is free of any structures, just being grassed over. So that was my summation on that point. Was a mention of parkland railings and some people feeling that wasn't appropriate for the site. I think my feeling is that whilst you have a lot of flint and natural stone walls in this area here, with this site, because it's got such an intimate relationship with the remaining verdant crescent of the Quar over here, that I think it would be good to have a native hedgerow defining that boundary, and with the further physical restriction of the parkland railings, because I think that would give a much more appropriate foil to the verdant character of the Quar, rather than putting in additional brick or natural stone walls in that area. That's my feeling on that, Chair. I will mention on surface water. This is clearly a relevant issue for this site, and we have control over that because there are outline conditions on the outline permission that require the submission of a scheme before development commences, and for that scheme to be carried out before the development is completed. Now, the fact we don't have that scheme now, we have a sort of summary of potential strategies provided for information. what we would do on receiving that submission, I would consult with the lead local flood authority for their views on it before coming to a judgment on whether or not it was appropriate or not. And I'm obviously very mindful of the fact that it clearly is an issue raised by a number of objectors and by the parish council, and it's right that we look at that very carefully, Chairman. So I just wanted to point that out. It's not an issue for consideration today, but it is something that clearly we will need to look at very carefully when that condition submission is made, assuming it comes forward, which it's required to do under the terms of the outline. So that was the point on that. And I think in terms of height, yeah, clearly, obviously, that the dwellings are rising a little into the site. That's inevitable because the ground levels do rise, as indeed they start to rise as you come out of Manor Farm Close. So it's logical to have a progressive adjustment and rising of height to the development as you enter the site. I think the positioning of the garages in this area, I think, is good because it's a bit like a range of traditional semi-rural outbuildings, effectively, by grouping them in this area rather than having them probably, as you often find in other context, at the end of the gardens in this sort of area. I think that's quite an acceptable approach, and it does contain them well within the site there. I mentioned briefly on construction traffic that we'd have control over that through the outline conditions. And I think that just to mention on car parking, so there's been some discussion over the number of spaces here, and a number of the spaces are in effect garages rather than car spaces. Nevertheless, we do only have a fairly standard provision of 2 spaces per unit, which is not excessive in any way for a relatively rural located development site such as this. So I do consider that parking provision is appropriate, and I do consider that the road is appropriate in terms of its design, because it will need to be to adoptable standard and is a logical continuation of Manor Farm Close. I think it might be useful if perhaps the Conservation Officer might like to make some comments regarding the design and materials and detailing that we have in the scheme. Perhaps if you'd like to invite James Weir, the Senior Conservation Officer, he may wish to comment a little bit more on that aspect.
I would like to welcome Mr. James Weir, and good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that, Bob. Yeah, I can certainly make some salient comments on some of those matters that have been raised. Obviously, well, not obviously, but I wasn't involved in the outline permission to this site, which occurred before I joined the authority. So I've only come on in terms of the reserved matters. And again, it's important to stress, as Bob did at the beginning, that we are dealing with reserved matters. So the principle and the up to quantum are sort of established by virtue of the outline. So therefore, I'm in a position of looking for any additional harm to the significance of heritage assets, which may or may not accrue from those particular reserved matters, rather than from the existence of the development itself. In terms of that assessment, as you will have seen, the particular heritage assets which I felt had the potential to be affected were the setting of the church and also the character and appearance of the conservation area. Now, in terms of the setting of the church, because the potential impacts are indirect, we're looking for ways in which the setting contributes to the significance of the church. So that's how we identify whether or not there's harm. The harm doesn't exist without reference to some identified element of significance. And these are set out in my comments to the application of on the 10th of May last year. But broadly, the setting was found to the contributory elements of setting were found to be the church's spatial relationship to within the village and to various items within the churchyard, as well as to Maiden Newton House, which was the old rectory. But also an important matter for our purposes here was the visual experience of the church as you approach the village southwards on the footpath as it emerges from the stream walk just to the northwest of the site. So there are various aspects of the reserve matters which could have impeded or impacted upon that view. Oh, yeah, that's excellent. That's just where you emerge at the top of the bank, if I remember rightly, and that's the view that greets you. Obviously, that's the Manor Farm, the existing Manor Farm development there. So the particular matters, obviously, which could have mattered here would be the scale of the buildings, the boundary treatment, and the appearance in particular. Because obviously, if there was something within that view which was radically different to what was there already in terms of the Manor Farm development, then obviously that would have jarred somewhat with the appreciation of the church. For example, if the buildings had been 3-storey or 4-storey or something, it would have been inappropriate. But certainly on my assessment of the application documentation, certainly the scale as was highlighted in the parameter plan is broadly consistent with that it is consistent with the Manor Farm development, as is the appearance generally in terms of materials and fairly traditional form. And the boundary treatment again, and I'd really echo what Bob said. Really, I'm also of the view that a sort of estate rail and soft boundary would be more appropriate here, given the potential to impact on this visual experience of the church. I think we want to soften that as much as possible in the reserve matters, and also bearing in mind that we also have the matters which we can condition for more information on, as Bob has already identified. In terms of the conservation area, there is an appraisal which identifies various key points of quality analysis, which are sort of bullet points which sort of summarise the sort of special architectural and historic interest. Again, these are set out in my comments and relate to things such as the plan of the village, various townscape progressions along the major routes, the water meadows, materials, traditional sort of vernacular material palettes such as flint and cob and stone and what have you. So again, looking at the development, this does form essentially an extension to a modern development, which is another important consideration. So whatever gets built as under the reserve matters has to bear some relevance to the development to its south, which obviously is not part of the historic routeways through the village. So in terms of the layout, and taking into account the fact that we do have the outline, and there's only so many ways you could lay out 9 dwellings on this site in a way that bore some relevance to the existing development. So there didn't seem to be any negative result from the layout, and the appearance again very much is in keeping with the existing Manor Farm development, both in terms of the design of the buildings themselves and, as far as I saw it, in the external surfacing in terms of the roads and utilising granite sets and what have you for roadside drainage. And again, that seemed to be a perfectly consistent way to deal with the design of this development, taking into account that it does have to read well with the existing development to its south. Yeah, so looking at those terms and looking at the key points again, which were identified as contributing to the character and appearance of the conservation area, there didn't seem to be any aspects of this scheme which would result in harm to that character and appearance, subject obviously to the approval of the conditions which can ensure certain materials and certain standards are met as these come forward. So so that was a brief summary, and so essentially I wasn't of the view that any level of harm resulted to the significance of the identified heritage assets.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, James, for your intervention in the meeting, and I do appreciate that. Okay, right. I'm now going to ask if there's any questions of a technical nature for the case officer or for the conservation officer.
Yes, Chairman, we've got Calvin Clayton first, okay. Paul Kimber, Jean Dunseith and Kate Weller at the moment.
Right, okay. Right, over to you then, Kelvin. You start the technical questions.
This is probably quite a minor question to start off with, but why have the houses got chimneys?
I hand that back to Bob to answer. I think you have mentioned that in your presentation, but would you like to clarify that, please?
The chimneys, they started off with a couple of the detached dwellings started off with external chimneys, which were sort of, in the words of historic England, apologetic, rather small. But yeah, in terms of the principal chimneys, they are, whether they actually get functionally used, maybe not, but if they don't, they are an important aesthetic contribution to the character and appearance of the conservation area. And I don't know about members generally, but I find you look at dwellings without chimneys and they definitely look unfinished. In a conservation area context such as this, it's very important that we have those elements of roofscape, detailed furniture to complete the quality of the designs, which is why all the dwellings here have them. And I deliberately amended the plan sort amendments to the 2 detached dwellings to make sure those chimneys were beefed up and were made internal to the gable end rather than projecting out in a traditional manner. So at the very least, they are an important aesthetic contributor to the overall quality of the scheme, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, perhaps that's something to debate at another point, but thank you for that.
Yeah, okay, Councillor. Right, Councillor Paul Kimber next. Technical question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My first point has been partly answered by Bill in his presentation about the surface water and flooding, and I'm pleased to hear that Bill said that this will be taken up later or as a part of the development later on. I was particularly concerned when I heard about the first objection, where the floor was below the pathway, and so so I'll leave that question open for Bob to be on. Another just a slight concern was a play area ever considered in this development? I'm thinking of young families taking the homes. That was my other point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Kimber. Would you like to answer that the latter question from Councillor Kimber, please?
Yes, Chairman. Thank you. As regards floor areas below pathway, I mean, obviously the surface water drainage will need to be appropriate to the site. The land is rising, as we appreciate from the levels information we see there on the street scenes. That there aren't any issues with the positioning of the dwellings as shown on this proposed scheme. And clearly the surface water drainage conditions will need to ensure that the drainage is appropriate for this site and is not detrimental to other properties outside the site on that point, Chairman. As regards to play area, there is one suggested, a locally equipped area of play. You see that the blue asterisk down here, which is outside the site of the built development, and that is something which you may have picked up from your report, but so there's a comment from the parish council that they do not want another play area, and that is something which would be picked up as part of the section 106 agreement provisions with the outline permission. So the parish council are thinking more in terms of whether or not they might receive instead of the money that would have funded the play area, the money going towards a sort of community garden project instead. So that's something that's not for you to consider today, but it is something that can be picked up as part of the outline permission and its associated agreement in due course, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Kimber?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, I believe we've got Councillor Jean Dunset next for a technical question. Over to you, Jean.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is about the fences between Plot 1 and Church Barn, which we've heard quite a bit about. And I appreciate that they've been put back in front of one of the windows by 3.5 metres. But the residents of Church Barn will still be looking out onto a fence instead of looking out onto an open field. And I've been sitting here wondering, how much light will they be losing? I know we've seen the line from the bottom of the window. I think it was 45 degrees, but they're not only going to lose some view, they are going to lose, I would have thought, some degree of light. And I just wondered how much effect these fences would have on that first window. I appreciate it is not in front of the second window. And I do think it's a shame that we're not really going into surface water here. This is something that could and will be looked at later. Because residents are concerned. I think we'd all be concerned about surface water runoff and flooding. But I just wondered here and now about the fence and the degree of light that might be lost. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dunset. I'm now going to take that back to Bob to give a few salient points.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as Councillor Dunseith rightly mentioned, we've shown the 45-degree angle here. This is a fairly standard measure of light reaching a window. If you can put in a 45-degree angle from the bottom of the window upwards, if that is not affected by light, by structures, as is respected by this line, that normally will allow a pretty good amount of light to come in to that window. Bear in mind there won't be any built structures here unless they receive planning approval within the garden of Plot 1 because of the condition on removing permitted development rights on outbuildings or decking. So there wouldn't be anything. We would have control over any structures that might exceed potentially 1.8 metres the height of the fence. Over the years, I've dealt with a number of situations where we've had these sort of unusual scenarios where you have the windows facing out, principal windows of a building or side windows of a building facing out onto an application site and accommodating them in a reasonable manner. And I stand by my view that this would not result in an unduly significant impact on light to that window, given the height of the fence at 1.8 and the setback of 3.5. Acknowledging that obviously that window does look across towards the fence, but in terms of light coming into it, I think that's an understandable and acceptable relationship, Chairman. Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Dunseith?
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I believe we've got Councillor Kate Weller to ask a technical question next. Over to you, Kate.
We have, Chairman, thank you. Bob, I wonder whether you can bring up the photograph you've got of the view looking south across the choir to the church. You had a photograph there.
That one?
That's it. That's lovely. Thank you. Thank you very much. You're talking about with your pointer. Can you just point where that boundary would be? I think I've got a fairly good idea of where it is, but if you could just indicate that initially, that would be helpful. That's great. Thanks. Okay. Now you're talking about railings there rather than a stone wall, and I think that as the conservation officer said, that's entirely right. It's a lot less intrusive in that very rural scene. I'm just wondering, and I don't know what I'm asking you really is whether we can put conditions in, because one would hope that people buying the properties will then landscape their gardens appropriately, but we can't be sure of that, and we certainly can't dictate. how people have their gardens. But I wonder whether we can have a condition that alongside those railings, and it may be an appropriate treatment for the fence in relation to the barn as well, whether we could have indigenous hedging conditioned there by the developers to be planted of a fairly mature size initially, and if that were dogwood, birch, hawthorn and so on, it replicates the hedges that are on Catterstock Road, but it also immediately helps with any displacement of birds, wildlife and so on in that site when we're doing the building. And I would have thought for the barn, it would be a much nicer thing to look out of that window and see birds feeding than see a fence. I don't know, I mean, other people may say, no, that's nonsense. And so be it. But if other people thought that hedging there, indigenous hedging, which we badly need, and would help with water levels and so on, if we could condition that, whether that would be appropriate or possible. Thank you very much, Chairman. Thanks, Bob. It would be interesting to know what you think.
Thank you.
Right, absolutely, Councillor Weller. Yeah, Chair, thank you. Yeah, I'm pleased to confirm exactly that. Basically, looking at this plan here, you can see hedging is shown along the rear boundary here and the other side of the path here, and similarly the other side of the pedestrian path to those properties, and then continuing along the site boundary here. That would be a native planted hedgerow. So that would have benefits in terms of an appropriate verdant visual foil to the quoir, and also would be invaluable habitat for nesting birds, foraging, etc. And that is just yeah. So on the landscaping plan, it's also shown on here. You see native hedgerow, and it would be along the back of these gardens as well. So there'd be an almost continuous line of native hedgerow fronted by the parkland railings, Chair.
That's lovely, Bob. Thanks. And I apologise. I missed that in the script, obviously, and that will be planted in an appropriate maturity of hedge initially, so that even if you're losing some, there'll still be some that will, because as I say, things like dogwood and hawthorn are pretty rapid in growth, and they would very quickly become established.
Yes, we've got, I can tell you, I mean, the boundary hedge will include, for example, field maple, hazel, holly, hawthorn. Other species are mentioned in there.
Terrific.
But yeah, I've also got conditions on for landscape management and landscape maintenance as part of the reserve matters. So we've sort of belt and braced that to ensure the growth and establishment of a really meaningful native hedgerow there.
That's terrific. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. If I may ask a technical question, please, Bob, I'm just wondering given that this is a semi-rural area, what the impact of streetlights would be.
I think it would be quite modest, actually, Chairman, here, because what we've done is the points of the street lights are 1, 2, 3. I think that's the points there on the corner of the dwellings. So what the principle that was established in Manor Farm Close, what we're seeking to do is this in this case, if it were to be approved, would be to continue these sort of fitments, 3 of those, to provide appropriate lighting. So that's the sort of fitment that would again be installed on this development. I think I've got a drawing. There we are. There's an example on number 1 as you enter the site. So that's the suggested lighting, and I believe that has actually been discussed to some extent with the highways officer, specifically during the applicant's discussions with them over the access road.
And the lights would be directed down to the street
Yeah,
level.
they are directed down. Yeah, that sort of pear-shaped form. Which, yeah.
Do we have any other technical questions, please, committee?
No further technical questions, Chairman, but we have started the queue for the debate.
Okay. Well, if there's no normal deliberation, right. Now I'll open it. If there's no more technical questions, I now open the debate to members. So who was the first to speak? Who's the first to speak, Bill?
Councillor John Worth, Chairman.
Councillor John Worth. Okay, John.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd like to commend the planning officer in the detail of his report. It was exemplary, I think, and also it was backed up very well by the conservation officer. And quite frankly, on the basis of that, I am prepared to propose that we recommend a minded to decision to approve this.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Worth. Who we have next to speak, Bill?
That's it at the moment, Chairman, but we do have a seconder and Councillor Kate Weller. If she'd like to affirm that in audio, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yes. I absolutely agree with Councillor Worth. A very, very comprehensive report. Thank you very much, Bob, and thank you for your input, Mr. Ware. And I'm very happy to second.
Okay.
We still currently have no further questions, Chairman, for the debate.
Well, in that case, and if there's no more deliberation and members are content that they have heard the entire presentation and debate, I will seek a minded to decision by resolution by roll call. So I'm going to start off with
before you do that, Chairman, a latecomer, not councillor, Anne Collins would like to speak.
Oh right, okay. Anne, would you like to come in?
Chair, can I just ask you to clarify with Councillor Worth and Councillor Weller that the proposal and seconding is based on the updated recommendation in the update sheet and the amendments to the planned list and condition 7, please?
Yeah.
Could I ask those, please?
Yes.
Yeah, Councillor Worth, yes, that's on that basis.
And from me as well. Kate Weller.
That's confirmed then now. Okay, all right. Councillor Dave Bowell.
Minded to approve, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Kelvin Clayton.
Yeah, approved, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Susan Cocking.
Approved, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jean Dunseth.
Approved, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Bill Pipe.
For, Chairman.
Thank you. For clarity, Councillor Nick Ireland.
For, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Kimber.
For, Chair.
For clarity, Councillor Kate Weller.
For.
Thank you. For clarity, Councillor John Worth.
For, Chairman.
And I'm in favour as well. I believe that's unanimous. So I now ask Anna Lee to make a formal decision on this item.
Thank you, Chairman. And firstly, I confirm that I've heard the presentation, the representations and the debate. I concur with the committee's minded to resolution. My decision, therefore, is the application will be approved subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. I do appreciate that. Right. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Thank you for your excellent presentation. And also, I'd like to thank James Wert for his comments within the meeting, and that was very helpful as well. We now take item 4C on the agenda.
Chairman, if I could interrupt, Councillor Weller has requested a comfort break.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, I think in view of that, I would now like to announce that we're going to have a comfort break of, say, 10 minutes. Is that okay with everyone? To take us to 10 to 12.
10 to 12, lovely.
10 to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good, Chairman.
Thank you. did they not check her bag?
David, you're on mute.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I didn't realise I was on mute. I'm going to do a quick roll call, make sure everyone's present. Councillor Burwell?
Yes, present, Chair.
Councillor Clayton?
I'm here, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Cocking?
Yes, present, Chair.
Yeah. Councillor Dunseth?
I'm here, Chairman.
Okay. Councillor, yes, I can see Bill's here. I'm here. Councillor Nick Ireland?
Present, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Paul Kimber?
Present, Chair.
Councillor Kate Weller?
Yes.
And Councillor John Worth?
Present, Chairman.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, welcome back, everyone. We'll now take item 4C on the agenda, WP 21-00029 FUL, 12 Spa Avenue, Weymouth, Dorset, DT3 5EJ. Now, this is for a change of use to convert existing dwelling, a use class C3, into a dental practice, which is use class EE, and creation of vehicle access. Now, the case officer for this is Charlotte Haynes. So I welcome Charlotte Haynes and to introduce the item. Good morning.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay.
just share my screen now.
Thank you.
Can everyone see?
Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, right. Yes, so this, as you introduced, this is the application for change of use to convert existing dwelling into a dental practice. This is the application site, which you can see is in an urban location on the northern end of Weymouth. It's situated on the corner plot here between the cul-de-sac of Spa Avenue, which leads off of the main road, Dorchester Road. You can see here you've got a public house, the railway line, which is the railway line into Weymouth from Dorchester, and here is a supermarket with the car park here and another stop here. Okay.
We can't see your cursor.
Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you.
That's right.
Thank you for pointing that out.
That's all right. That's right.
There we go. Yes, that's the, there we go.
Okay,
there we go. There's the application site. There's the pub. There's the railway line, and here's the, as a little summary, the supermarket and car park. Okay, there we go. Right, here's a closer up view of the site with the surrounding development, as pointed out before. As you can see here, the existing vehicular access into the site. It's an existing bungalow on the corner, so you can see it's at the end terrace of a terrace of 3 properties here, and there's the existing access and the existing which leads up to the driveway. And this is showing the proposed layout with staff parking here and visitor parking here, and then this is the proposed new access onto Spa Avenue, which, as indicated, would form the exit to the car parking area, with the existing access serving as the entrance. I'll explain that in more detail in the next slide. Well, no, next after this, the aerial photograph here. This again just shows the what really is illustrated on the previous 2 slides, in particular with the pub here, the railway line, and the supermarket and car park, the main Dorchester Road, and the cul-de-sac of Spa Avenue. And you can see the application site sitting in the middle there, and you can just make out the front garden and the drive. And this is the slide that shows the existing and proposed site plan. As you can see, this is at the moment the current arrangement with a front garden with 2 trees, existing drive, as I previously indicated, and the vehicular access with a small pedestrian gated access on this side onto Spa Avenue. You will also note that there is a telegraph pole and street name plate here, and it's marked to be retained, and that's also marked here on the proposed site plan, along with the existing block wall be retained up to this point here, and then obviously here where the proposed exit point is, or the access there, is obviously to remove that part of the wall up to there, so it'll come up to the top of where the existing pedestrian gated access is. At that point there, I've measured the curb, the pavement at this point, which you can see clearly narrows to just under 1 metre in width. And as I said on the previous slide, this is the proposed parking layout with staff parking here. This is 3 visitor parking spaces here, which is considered to be sufficient given its sort of urban location and on a main bus route and easily walkable from the catchment area. You can see that we've also, this is actually an amended plan that we've given, because the original plan did show the wall to be removed and also indicated no sort of planting. So additional planting has been put to sort of mitigate and offset the impact of losing the front garden trees. And as I say, the wall was retained because otherwise the cars would have the ability to sort of exit into and out of the site over the pavement, which obviously would have a clear highway safety impact. So that was the reason for making sure the wall is to be retained, along with the street furniture indicated here. The existing floor plans and elevations of the terraced bungalow, single-story bungalow, you can see here. The proposed floor plans and elevations, which show that largely to remain the same in terms of appearance, albeit there will be a change with the front entrance doors, which is a front elevation that faces on towards Dorchester Road. You also see here the indicated layout for the dental practice. Front entrance doors here, reception waiting area here, and then obviously all the surgery rooms and so forth around it. Here is a street view image, which I think is particularly helpful in showing its context in the area. It sits, as I said before, in the corner of the cul-de-sac of Spa Avenue with Dorchester Road. As you see, it's a single story with the two-story detached houses here, and it's obviously going into Spa Avenue, where they are all single-story terraced bungalows, effectively, along this road. You can see here the front wall and the frieze that are to be removed, and the street furniture that's there. This is a view taken from the north, looking down towards the site. You can again see the front wall. This view shows the pedestrian gated access that is to be. You can see the extent there of where the proposed vehicular access, which would serve as the exit point for the car park, would be. It's clear of this street light, so that's to be retained, and as previously indicated, so are these here, and then the wall is to come down in this element here, with the remainder of the wall to be retained. This is a close-up photograph, again, pretty much indicating what I've already set out in terms of the showing the existing pedestrian access and also where the indicated proposed vehicular access point or exit point would be onto Spa Avenue, thus allowing vehicles to leave the car park onto Spa Avenue, and then they would come up to the junction of Spa Avenue with Dorchester Road to allow that safe exit out of the site. And again, this is the site photograph taken from opposite side of Dorchester Road, looking back towards it. You can see the existing vehicular access point, which is to serve as the entrance for vehicles coming in off of Dorchester Road, off of the main road, which is likely to be where we'll be travelling from. And yes, they'll come in and park, and behind the front wall, which, as I said before, is to be retained. And last photograph here, showing again just a close-up of what we've really all seen, which is the wall and the frontage, looking down across at the main Dorchester Road, where you can see the supermarket car park opposite. Give a bit more context to the site. Okay, and the main planning issues with this is that it is within the defined development boundary. It's in a sustainable location for this proposed community use as a dental practice. So it's well related to the existing catchment area. It's in a good location for people that use the dental practice, either via on foot, through using the bus route. There's a bus stop immediately to the north of the site. So it's envisaged that that's probably likely how people would access it. Of course, it will have some parking to allow for people to also travel on by car. It's not considered there'll be any harm to the character of the area, having regard to the urban location that we're in and the prevalence of parking in the frontages and hard standing and so forth. And as said about previously, the additional planting has been introduced on the amended plan to sort of soften the impact, particularly on the side of the site that fronts onto the more intimate and residential character of Spa Avenue, which is the cul-de-sac there. It's not considered there'll be any significant harm to neighbours, as the proposed use would not generate a significant level of noise and disturbance. It is a very small dental practice, effectively, that's being proposed here. It's not considered there'll be any harm to highway safety, and this is subject to the amended plans with the retention of the front wall and the reduction in the width of the new access, and obviously showing that in-out arrangement, and that would all be secured through conditions. Therefore, the application is recommended for approval that actually the committee be minded to delegate to the head of planning to grant planning permission subject to the following conditions: 3-year time limit to approved plans, and a condition that restricts the use to medical or health purposes, which is obviously the application to which we are considering, the proposed use which we're considering. And that a condition that will ensure the retention in perpetuity of the block wall fronting the pavement for the reasons set out previously, that it will ensure that vehicles drive into the site in a safe manner and exit the site in a safe manner in the interest of protecting highway and pedestrian safety. Condition also to secure additional planting in that side area facing onto Spa Avenue to be submitted for approval. In addition to that, we've also got the following parking access conditions, which are actually updated versions from those that were contained within the officer recommendation report. These are as advised by the highway engineer, who is available at the end of this presentation to answer any questions pertaining to this matter. So there we go. I'll read these out in full for you. Before the development is occupied or utilised, the first 5 metres of the vehicle access measured from the rear edge of the highway, excluding the vehicle crossing, see the informative notes that will be set out below in the below slide, must be laid out and constructed to a specification submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. And this is to ensure that a suitably surfaced and constructed access to the site is provided that prevents loose material being dragged and or deposited onto the adjacent carriageway, causing a safety hazard. The next condition is before the development hereby approved is occupied or utilised, the turning and parking shown on the drawing number, which is obviously the layout drawing, must have been constructed. Thereafter, these areas must be permanently maintained, kept free from obstruction, and available for the purposes specified to ensure the proper and appropriate development of the site and to ensure that the highway safety is not adversely impacted upon. And then there must be no gates hung so as to form obstruction to the vehicle accesses serving the site. And the reason is to ensure the free and easy movement of vehicles through the accesses and to prevent any likely interruption to the free flow of traffic on the adjacent public highway. And lastly, a scheme must be submitted to the planning authority to show how the access is shown on the, again, the last site plan, which is that drawing number, will be signed and marked to ensure the accesses are used for the purposes of entry only, exit only, previously indicated. Any such scheme requires approval to be obtained in writing from the planning authority. The planning authority, I should say. The approved scheme must be provided before the development is occupied or utilised, and thereafter must be permanently maintained for the purposes specified. Reason to ensure safe entry and exit to and from the site onto the highway. And then lastly, it's just the informative that would accompany that previous access specification condition. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Charlotte. I believe Anna would like to come in at this point with a technical.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's Anne. Just to say, in respect to the last condition, if you could just flip back a slide, Charlotte, for me. Yep. We will just need to amend slightly the wording of that last condition to put a trigger in for when they've got to submit the scheme for the appropriate signage. So effectively, we'd suggest to members that they delegate, be minded to delegate authority to approve, subject to the conditions that Charlotte set out, with a slight tweaking to the wording to make sure that just those highway conditions all meet the tests for the conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you for that. That amends that condition slightly then. Is that right, Charlotte?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so when I come to the proposal, well, I'll ask whether they propose that change as well. But before I do so, are there any questions of a technical nature for either the case officer or highway officer, which I understand is present?
None at all, Chairman. None at all.
Oh, there we are, you see, Charlotte. They don't want to ask a technical question. That's fine. Okay, then. Right. Okay, if there's no more, if there's no technical questions, then I'll open the debate to members. Have we got anyone wishing to speak?
Councillor Weller, Chairman.
Councillor Weller, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I guess having made my living from dentistry for 40 years, it's appropriate for me to speak now. I'm delighted to see this application. There's a great need for dentists in the area. So 3 additional surgeries, hopefully all working full time, will be a huge asset, not just to Weymouth, but the surrounding area as well. And I would like to recommend that we approve, or are minded to approve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Proposal.
Before you seek a seconder, Chairman, Councillor Kimber.
Councillor Kimber, over to you, Councillor Kimber.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second it. as Councillor Waller said, we badly need a dentist in around our county. So happy to second the amended plan.
Okay, can I clarify, please, both from you, Councillor Weller, and you, Councillor Kimber, that proposal and secondary is in accordance with the changes made to the conditions as mentioned a few moments ago?
Yes, Chairman, that's fine, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and you're happy with that? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, fine by me, Chair.
Yeah, okay. Anyone else wishing to speak?
No, Chairman, but be minded that the wording needs to be changed as Anne Collins has said. So,
yeah, I'll just clarify that point.
Yeah, okay, as long as members are aware. No, that's it, Chairman. You're free to go to the vote.
Okay, all right. Okay, I'll take the vote by roll call, remembering, of course, as Councillor Pipes has pointed out, there is a change to the conditions slightly, which we've covered. Councillor Dave Bowell.
Yes, minded to approve, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Kelvin Clayton.
Yeah, approved, Chair.
Councillor Susan Hocking.
Approved, Chair.
Thank you, Susan. Councillor Jean Dunseth.
Approved, Chair.
Councillor Bill Pipe.
For, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Nick Ireland.
For, Chairman.
Thank you, Nick. For clarity, Councillor Paul Kimber.
For, Chair.
Thank you. For clarity, Councillor Kate Weller.
For.
Thank you. Councillor John Ware.
For, Chair.
And I'm in approval as well. I understand that could well be unanimous. So bearing that in mind, I now ask Anne Lee to make a formal decision on this item.
Thank you, Chairman. I confirm that I heard the full presentation and I concur with the committee's minded to resolution. This means the application will be approved subject to conditions and subject to the amendment to the condition as discussed. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for that. We'll now take item 4D on the agenda. That's POUT 2021 01128, land east of the Paddocks, Masterton, DT 838Q. As already stated, this item has been deferred and will not be debated at this particular meeting. Bearing that in mind, members, the committee meetings are limited to 3-hour duration unless the majority of members present ballot for the meeting to continue. It is therefore necessary to take a vote to resume the meeting beyond that time limit. So I will now take a vote by roll call to extend the meeting to our afternoon session. So, Councillor Dave Bowell.
Yes, I'm happy to do that, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Kelvin Clayton.
Yeah, I'm happy with that, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Susan Cocking.
I'm happy with that, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jean Dunseth.
Approved, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Bill Pipe.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Nick Ireland.
Agreed.
Okay. Councillor Paul Kimber.
Approved, Chair.
Councillor Kate Weller.
Agreed.
Councillor John Ware.
Agreed, Chairman.
I'm in agreement as well. Again, the old problem, as the committee is fully aware, when we post notifications of agendas online, etc., we do get time limits displayed, and because the afternoon session is displayed to start at 2 o'clock, we unfortunately can't bring that forward. So therefore, I'm going to close the morning session and go to lunch, nice long lunch hour, to resume at 2 o'clock. So I look forward to seeing you all at 2. Thank you, everyone. See you this afternoon.
Everybody.